Check check your mic and make sure it sounds right, Royce.
Check, check.
How are you today?
Doing good. How are you?
You know, the show, I'm great. The show must go on no matter where we are. The show is on the road. Where Royce, you're somewhere, and where you're in Michigan?
Going through Illinois, heading to Michigan.
All right. And I'm coming from Southeast Asia in the Philippines. But the bulk truth is live. We're talking about a great topic today. So, in a plant, Royce, you have shifts. You have shift work. You have people that work these different shifts. The systems are in place. One guy steps out, another person steps in, and it's supposed to run smooth, right?
That's correct.
But when you're measuring dry bulk materials, that story may not be true. When you're running a business, I think every person I work with that's running a business, they're metaphorically trying to get their arms around their business. They're trying to see what's going on. They want to make sure nothing's falling through the cracks. And so they want to put their finger on the pulse of their business. And guess where CADARO comes in? On getting clarity on what the real pulse is. Imagine a couple of people taking a pulse of a patient, and the doctor's trying to make decisions and prescribe medications. And what plan are we going to implement? Are we going to cut him open? What are we going to do? What's the pulse? And he's getting different readings. That would put him in confusion, wouldn't it?
Sure. Well, I like where you're going with that. So the pulse is, as far as the CADARO measurement, knowing precisely what's going on at any given minute, and possibly even understanding the rhythm. I mean, we see a lot of these plants that, if you're monitoring the pulse, or you're seeing it on the screen, it looks more like an EKG in the hospital. So it's ramping up and maybe coming down, but it has a rhythm, which is a unique signature for each plant and each process.
Well, I never thought about each plant would have a unique signature. So their equipment is ramping up and then ramping down. Ramping up and ramping down. You imagine, I'm in these traffic jams here in the Philippines. It's crazy to see all the traffic going by, but you go fast for a minute and then you stop. And I can imagine that's happening in plants. That's hard on the equipment. It causes confusion, chaos, wear and tear.
Yeah, which, it could be, maybe it's not so severe. Maybe it's their rhythm, right? So, it's the operating range. And so having something like a CADARO flow sensors where they can see that range and measure that and understand it. And in today's topic, as far as it changing across shifts. So if the processes are not automated, they're manual. In some cases, they may be using a measurement like a CADARO, but they're still manually making adjustments, making decisions, that varies, so it's subjective, one operator to the next, what they believe it should be at and where they're at, versus, having facilities that are utilizing technology and automating some of those processes. So regardless of who's sitting in the seat, the plant continues to operate exactly the same, no matter, which shift or person's working.
It can run at an optimum range. So here's the infographic that you created. This is excellent. So it's showing the cost of inconsistency. Walk us through this, Royce.
Yeah, so I think at the bottom left, it starts there, right? Are they measuring? And so are there hidden performance gaps? And so that's where CADARO comes in. So, where we can implement technology, measure flow rates, understand precisely what's going on. So that's step one. And then step two is who's sitting in the seat, who's utilizing that information. Are they automating it, or are they manually making adjustments? And so as we give you visibility to production, to operations, then as we think about removing the potential subjective variable from the process, we move to the right-hand side where now it's becoming more automated, it's becoming more consistent. And ideally, it's optimizing production, or optimizing the overall process, and improving the bottom line and results.
So we're optimizing the system whereby we're getting clear data. We're optimizing you called it the rhythm of the plant. in between, in between drivers of the shift, so to speak. The rhythm of the plant continues on, and then you're blowing out a lot of fog. You're blowing out the hidden stuff, and you're revealing actual data in real time.
That's correct. And ideally it's the same. So regardless of which shift, which day, we talked about each plant's having its own signature. And so knowing, over time, where should we be operating, and starting to create KPIs as far as how close we are to where we want to be versus where we normally are. And if something's changing in the plan or something, there may be an indicator or an alert that goes off that says, wait, something's changed, right? Now we're off 15% of our normal operating. Why is that? And what might be about to occur, or what needs to be adjusted or changed?
So, but depending on the material, for example, if we're starting to see a variation, it could be humidity. It could be, what are some other considerations that might, help the people that are working in these plants go, oh, this would work in my case.
Sure. And so it could be, they may be using rotary valves, right? So they may be today looking at rotations, and possibly it's losing some of the material flow, right? It's not, a tank maybe is going empty. Maybe there's a blockage. They might be using amps on a motor, right? So moisture, other conditions, could be changing. So really it's unlimited as far as the things that may be impacting of why that change is occurring. But the most important thing is you can see something's happened, right? Now there's something is going on or about to occur that is not normal, right? Or where we want to be operating. So trained people can go start troubleshooting and understanding why.
Well, so all of a sudden, when now we have a better idea, back to that patient in the pulse, right? We're able to start evaluating and getting a good prescriptive uh, plans, right? So you think that what kind of materials?
Sure. And some
Yeah.
of my travels this week, and that's exactly what I'm doing, is going to a site where they started observing last 2 days of last week. Something's going on. And so to go back and confirm that, the CADARO technology is working correctly, and the insights that it's providing are accurate, and action, deserve some type of action versus historically the way they've been operating, and being able to reconcile that difference.
You were mentioning a percentage that, so they were running at a certain optimum. They noticed a variation. What was about, the percentage of variation was significant.
Yeah, so over a span of a week, it looked like where things were running very tightly, where they thought it was operating and what we were demonstrating. I think the last 2 days, it shipped at 11%, and then upwards of 25%. And so that was the red flag of why is this different than what we had assumed or what we typically use for our measurements. And so which it's not uncommon. And so thinking about, you get this pulse, you get this rhythm within these plants. So that's what the CADARO technology is demonstrating. It puts it on a screen, it digitizes it. What gives us a fair amount of confidence, it was following other trends within the plant. They're still monitoring amps on motors, things of that nature. And you see, the CADARO lines, as far as what it's measuring, is more consistent with there's more, the measurements are more dynamic. They're not static, and they're not a flat line, as you might expect, that especially when something's going on.
That's interesting. So before CADARO, they wouldn't have known this variation or wouldn't be aware of the actual specifics, right? And now because they're running with a question mark, it's very important to them to get to the bottom of that. Whereas before CADARO was implemented, they were unaware of that.
Sure. Yeah. So that visibility, I mean, first phase is we're digitizing what's happening at any given moment. The next phase is gaining confidence and trust in the numbers and what it's showing. And then the third phase is starting to create actions off of the CADARO measurements, and to automate and to stabilize the process.
Yeah, and in this case, with the title of the episode, the shift change, then to make sure that it's consistent across all the different shifts during the operation of the plant.
That's right. And that's where the automation comes in, right? Now that you have these measurements where people possibly were making manual adjustments, ideally the system starts making adjustments, or so regardless of who's working at any given time, it's more repeatable.
Imagine running a plant and you have, let's say, you have three shifts, and so you've got your lead person that's been there for years, or just a natural. They're, what is it, unconscious competent. They just know their system really well. And then you got the second person who's a little bit newer, and then the newest person. And you're trying to decide on what shift to place these people based on what's going on in the plant. Are we receiving a bunch of material today? I need my top guy or my top person in that shift today. Whereas implementing the CADARO system, that I could see where that could relieve a little frustration or tension.
Sure. No, that's a good point. I mean, with these measurements and with the ability to automate from these measurements, then it becomes less critical who's sitting in the seat, what their level of experience is. If there's an issue, maybe their ability to troubleshoot maybe would be different, right? But as far as the plant operating, that stays fairly static and consistent day to day, person to person.
So then just speak a little bit about, all right, so we got this in here. I imagine that's a bit of relief to that person that's in that position, trying to keep an eye on this pulse or the rhythm. What are some of the benefits now for that person?
I mean, first off, it's something that maybe takes a little pressure off of them, right? So now they can see it. Possibly they could compare to where it's normally operating, and so I would think it's a little bit of relief just knowing versus trying to guess or trying to figure it out, especially in cases where they've been using calculations, right? For somebody new stepping in and running formulas and having confidence in those formulas, they're probably more in tune to having confidence in what they're seeing on the screen, which is what we're providing as that first step.
Yeah. Documenting. I could see where a lot of documenting would be streamlined, or you don't have to, I don't know if you're manually or having to enter stuff into a spreadsheet. I don't know how they do that, but
Yeah. Oh, that's come up on the site that I'm going to this week. I mean, it's reporting. So that's what's important to them, is they have obligations for reporting, and so they want to make sure that they're reporting the right numbers. And so as we dig into this and understand it more, ideally it's CADARO's giving them capability to report more accurately each given day what's happening as far as the amount of product being processed and what the implications are.
these plants, they may be running different materials through. They're not all running like corn or something. They may have very ingredients that are coming by. No.
They could. In a lot of cases where we install these, they're generally handling it's more consistent material. So there is the possibility maybe they're processing more than one, but by and large, most of them are processing a single material in a given process.
So they could be mixing as well. Mixing. So you guys help with seeds. You help with corn. Talk about a little bit about the materials that this excels at.
Yeah. So if it's dried, it'll flow. The CADARO flow sensors can measure, and so in some cases, we're measuring seed, we're measuring grain, we're measuring processed grains or materials. There may be an application, and you talked about mixing or blending, where they're creating a mix or a batch. Possibly they need to know the volume of material that's coming from different streams, right? So they're trying to hit an optimum mix or a ratio, right, as far as improving overall yields and the bottom lines. And so again, anywhere that material's flowing and there's a transition point is an opportunity to integrate a CADARO flow sensor to measure that specific material in that phase of the facility.
So you have different devices for different flow. You've got yeah. So we've got incline. We've got take it over.
Yeah. So great point. So a lot of existing facilities, space is always tight. And so whether it be on an incline or a vertical application, we have solutions for both. And so they're very scalable. You may be measuring very low flow rates, 15 pounds a minute, maybe in a 2 or 3 inch pipe, coming out of a 2 or 3 inch pipe, all the way up to something that may be 36 inches in width. And so the good thing about the CADARO technology is we have our Veracity series are for vertical applications. Our Integral series are for incline applications. Most recently, we launched our Veracity Diamond, which are for very tight spaces, very minimal transition space. As low in some of the larger volumes, 20,000 pounds a minute, we can fit into a 12-inch clearance. And so that's been a benefit for our opportunity to fit into facilities and give them insights in areas that previously wasn't an option.
And in a very quick timeline as far as installation and calibration, one could be in an afternoon up and running.
Sure.
No?
Yeah. So the fastest we've done is like 30 minutes. And so generally, as we look at a facility, we understand the chute size, the flange size. We typically try to size the units relative to what's already there, and to minimize the amount of additional work and investment to make changes. And that's served us well as far as the speed, as far as applications and reducing some of the complexity. There's always going to be certain transitions that need to be produced or considered. But we're not talking days. We're generally talking minutes to hours.
Wow. So that data can flow wherever, back to the home office, back. And so you've got your person that's measuring, he's out of the noisy, or she's out of the noisy environment, the hot environment, the dusty, and in an office, and can observe and have better data and better clarity and better finger on the pulse.
For sure. Yeah, our controls, so each of our sensors comes with the control panels. So if there's not a PLC or there's not automation on site, so they can do that from the CADARO system. Where they already have automation, they can integrate the information that CADARO is creating and collecting into the systems that they have. Ideally in an office with cameras, they can generally automate some of those processes of things that they were manually doing outside. Now they can move them into maybe a little better atmosphere.
Now walk us through the subscriptions, how to pay for this, or what are the options that you have that they can choose from?
Sure. So for those that are looking that they prefer CapEx, there's always that opportunity to buy the technology and outright own it with perpetual licenses. For others that are still somewhat skeptical as far as what is it going to do, or they want the opportunity to utilize OpEx and get a faster return on investment, we have our CADARO Complete subscriptions, where we provide everything and they're just paying an annual fee to utilize the technology. And so we try to have options regardless of who the customer is, what works best for them, and what's going to fit best on their finances.
All right. So we got clarity as far as what we can measure, how we're going to pay for it. We can get a finger on the pulse, improve the rhythm, have clarity of data, make better decisions. There's a lot of upsides here. And you guys have removed all the downsides. Like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to reconfigure my whole plant. No, you can be up and running in an afternoon.
Sure. Yeah. And we always welcome the conversation. So if somebody's heard something that's interesting or something, we've opened the door of something that they've been discussing internally. It's not uncommon for us to do virtual site assessments. So there's an opportunity that they can go to the website and go to the CADARO.com and there's links there to schedule a virtual meeting. And that's generally how the conversation gets started, or there's a phone number there that they can reach out directly. And then we can find a time that's convenient for them and us and answer any questions they may have.
All right. We got the QR code too. Royce pulled over by the side of the road, does the bulk truth, and he's on to save another business.
Thanks for your time.
All right. That's the bulk truth. That's what it is, Royce. Great job today. We'll see you next week, same time. And that's a wrap.